You know, there's something rather extraordinary that happens when we finally sit down and look at our mothers, really look at them, not as the person who raised us, not as the source of our wounds, not even as mother in the archetypal sense, but as a human being who was herself once a child, frightened and confused, doing her best with tools she never asked for and a role she never fully understood. And I want to suggest something to you today that might be difficult to hear, that your healing, your actual healing, cannot begin until you understand something fundamental about the woman who brought you into this world. Not forgive, necessarily, not excuse, but understand. And this understanding, I promise you, is not what you think it is. Now, I'm not speaking of the superficial understanding we often mistake for insight. I'm not talking about intellectually knowing that she did her best or she had a difficult childhood. These are platitudes, you see, comfortable phrases we use to avoid the real work. I'm speaking of something far more profound and far more unsettling, a recognition that will fundamentally alter how you see yourself. Have you ever really looked at your mother? I mean, truly looked? Not with the eyes of the wounded child still living inside you, not with the anger of the adolescent who needed her to be different, but with the eyes of someone observing another human being caught in the great web of existence. What do you see? Most of us look at our mothers and see only our own story. We see the times she wasn't there when we needed her. We see the words that cut too deep. We see the love that came with conditions, the attention that had to be earned, the approval that always seemed just out of reach. And all of this may be absolutely true. Your pain is real, your wounds are valid. But here's where it gets interesting. And here's what nobody tells you. When you look at your mother and see only your wounds, you're not actually seeing her at all. You're seeing a character in your story, the villain perhaps, or the flawed hero, the person who was supposed to save you but didn't. And as long as you see her only through this lens, you remain trapped in a very particular kind of hell, the hell of the eternal child, forever waiting for a mother who will never come. Let me tell you about something I've observed over many years. There was a woman, let's call her Catherine, who spent decades in therapy working through her relationship with her mother. She could articulate perfectly how her mother's coldness had damaged her, how the lack of affection had created her inability to trust, how the criticism had shaped her perfectionism. She had mapped every wound with precision. And yet, she wasn't healing. Year after year, same patterns, same pain, just different words to describe it. Until one day, something shifted. She was looking at an old photograph of her mother as a young woman, maybe 23, holding Catherine as an infant. And for the first time, she didn't see mother. She saw a terrified girl playing a role she had no idea how to play. This is what I want you to understand. Your mother was not born a mother. She was born a baby just like you. She was once a small child with her own wounds, her own fears, her own desperate need for love that may or may not have been met. And then one day, ready or not, she was handed you, a tiny helpless thing that needed everything from her. And she was expected to know what to do. The first danger in not understanding this is that you remain forever the effect of her actions, never the cause of your own life. You see, as long as your mother is the reason for your pain, she's also the reason you can't heal. As long as you're waiting for her to finally become who you needed her to be, you're not living your own life, you're living in reaction to hers. I've watched people spend entire lifetimes in this prison. Every relationship they enter, they're looking for the mother who will finally get it right. Every failure they experience, they trace back to what she did or didn't do. Every limitation they have, they attribute to her limitations. And in doing so, they've made her omnipotent. They've given her more power over their adult life than she ever actually had. But here's the second danger, and this one's more subtle. When you cannot see your mother as a human being, when you can only see her through the lens of your own woundedness, you actually cannot see yourself clearly either, because you are, whether you like it or not, made partly of her. Her patterns live in you, her fears speak through you, her unhealed wounds often become your own. And this creates a terrible bind. If you hate her, you must hate those parts of yourself that are like her. If you're angry at her limitations, you cannot accept your own. If you refuse to see her humanity, you cannot fully inhabit your own. It's like trying to reject half of your DNA. It doesn't work, it just creates an internal war that exhausts you. Now, you might be thinking, but you don't know what she did. You don't understand how bad it was. And you're right, I don't. Your experience is yours, and your pain is valid. But here's what I do know. I know that healing doesn't come from finally making her see what she did to you. It doesn't come from getting an apology you'll likely never receive. It doesn't come from her changing or dying or disappearing from your life. Healing comes from a very different place. It comes from the moment you can look at this woman and really see, that she was a child playing at being an adult, just like most of us are. That she was handed a script she couldn't read, for a play she didn't audition for, and she did what frightened, confused, wounded people do. She improvised, badly sometimes, the best she could other times, but always from within her own limitations. Let me give you an image. Imagine you're watching a play, and one of the actors forgets her lines. She stumbles, says the wrong thing, ruins the scene. You can sit in the audience and be angry that she ruined the performance. Or you can recognize that she's an actor, flawed and human, doing her best in that moment with whatever preparation she had or didn't have. Your mother forgot her lines. She said the wrong things. She missed her cues. But she was never the villain you needed her to be, and she was never the saint you wanted her to be. She was just an actor in a role that no one is ever fully prepared for. The third danger is perhaps the most painful. When you cannot understand your mother's humanity, you cannot break the cycle. Whatever she did to you, whatever patterns she passed down, they will continue through you, not because you're doomed or cursed, but because you cannot transform what you cannot see clearly. I've spoken with people who swore they would never be like their mothers, and then one day they hear their mother's words coming out of their own mouth. They feel their mother's anxiety coursing through their own body. They watch themselves repeating the exact patterns they despised, and they're horrified. But this horror is actually a doorway, because in that moment of recognition, you have a choice. You can reject it, push it away, pretend you're different, or you can turn toward it with curiosity. Ah, there she is. There's the pattern. There's the wound trying to perpetuate itself. And in that turning toward, rather than away, something begins to shift. You see, your mother is not your enemy. She never was. She was a wounded person trying not to drown, and sometimes in her thrashing, she pulled you under with her. This is what wounded people do, not from malice, not from lack of love, but from desperation, from unconsciousness, from the weight of their own unprocessed pain. And here's where we come to the real understanding, the one that changes everything. Your mother could not give you what she never received. She could not teach you emotional skills she was never taught. She could not offer unconditional love if she never experienced it herself, not because she didn't want to, but because we cannot give what we don't have. Think of it this way. If someone who never learned to swim tried to teach you swimming, would you be angry at them for your inability to swim? Or would you recognize the limitation and find another teacher? Your mother taught you what she knew. The problem is, what she knew was often survival, not thriving. Defense mechanisms, not authentic connection. How to manage pain, not how to heal it. Now, here's where this gets interesting. The fourth danger is that without this understanding, you spend your life trying to heal the wrong wound. You think the wound is what she did to you, but the actual wound is deeper. The wound is the belief that you are only what was done to you. The wound is the story that says your worth was determined by whether she could see it. I want you to consider something radical. What if your mother's inability to give you what you needed had nothing to do with your worthiness to receive it? What if her limitations were about her, not about you? What if the love you needed was always available, just not from her, because she didn't have it to give? This is not about excusing her. This is about freeing yourself. Because as long as you believe that her failure to love you properly means something about your lovability, you're still a child waiting at the door for someone who isn't coming. But when you understand that her limitations were hers, not yours, you can finally stop waiting and start living. Let me tell you what happens when this understanding finally lands. It's not what you expect. You don't suddenly feel warm and fuzzy about her. You don't forget the pain. You don't pretend everything was fine. What happens is much simpler and much more profound. You stop needing her to be different. And this is the key to everything. Because the moment you stop needing her to be different, you stop being trapped by who she was. You can finally see her clearly, without the distortion of your unmet needs. And in that clear seeing, something remarkable happens. You see yourself clearly too. You realize that you are not simply the product of her failures. You are not just the sum of her wounds. Yes, she shaped you. Yes, she influenced you. But you are also made of your own responses, your own choices, your own capacity to learn and grow beyond what she could teach you. You are the one who survived her limitations and is still here, still trying, still capable of more than she was. The fifth danger, and this is crucial, is that without understanding your mother's humanity, you cannot access compassion. And I'm not talking about compassion for her, though that may come. I'm talking about compassion for yourself. Because the harsh voice in your head, the one that says you're not enough, that criticizes every mistake, that demands perfection, that's often her voice. The voice she used on herself and then on you. And as long as you're identified with that voice, as long as you think it's telling you the truth, you cannot be gentle with yourself. You cannot allow yourself to be human, to fail, to learn, to grow. You remain caught in the same trap she was caught in, the same harsh judgment, the same impossibly high standards, the same belief that love must be earned rather than simply being your birthright. But when you can see that voice for what it is, an internalized version of her own woundedness, you can begin to question it. Is this true? Or is this just the echo of her pain speaking through me? And in that questioning, you create space for a different voice, a kinder voice. Now, you might be wondering, does this mean I have to have a relationship with her? Does this mean I have to let her back into my life if I've created distance? And the answer is no. Understanding doesn't require proximity. Compassion doesn't require contact. You can fully understand your mother's humanity and still choose to protect yourself from her if she continues to be harmful. This is important to grasp. Understanding is not the same as accepting ongoing harm. You can see why she is the way she is without subjecting yourself to it. You can have compassion for her pain without making her pain more important than your own well-being. You can honor the humanity you share without sacrificing your boundaries. The work is internal. It's not about fixing your relationship with her. It's about changing your relationship with the story you tell about her and yourself. It's about looking at the narrative you've been living in and asking, is this the whole truth? Or is this the truth as seen through the eyes of a wounded child? Let me give you another image. Imagine you're holding a photograph, but you're holding it so close to your face that all you can see is one small section, blown up and distorted. That's what it's like when you're inside your wounds, inside your story about what she did to you. You see only that piece, huge and overwhelming, and you think that's the whole picture. But what if you could step back, not far back, not to the point where the pain becomes invisible or minimized, just back far enough to see the whole photograph, to see her as she was, young and frightened, to see yourself as you were, needy and small, to see the whole tragic beauty of two people who needed more than they could give each other. From that distance, something shifts. The pain is still there, but it's not the whole story anymore. There's also the struggle, the trying, the moments when love was present, even if imperfectly, the ways she was broken, and the ways she tried to not pass that brokenness on, even when she failed. The full complexity of what it means to be human and flawed and doing your best with what you have. The sixth danger is that without this understanding, you remain in what I call the if-only prison. If only she had been different, I would be happy. If only she had loved me properly, I wouldn't struggle. If only she had given me what I needed, my life would be better. These thoughts seem reasonable, but they're actually chains keeping you bound to a past you cannot change. The truth is this: she wasn't different. She didn't love you the way you needed. She didn't give you what you required. These are the facts, and no amount of anger, grief, or wishful thinking will change them. The question is not why wasn't she better? The question is, given that she wasn't, who will I choose to become? This is where your power actually lives, not in changing the past, not in getting her to finally understand, but in choosing how you will respond to the hand you were dealt. Will you let her limitations define your limitations? Or will you use them as a catalyst to become more than what was modeled for you? I've seen people do both. I've seen people stay trapped in bitterness for decades, and I've seen people transform their wounds into wisdom. The difference is always the same. The ones who heal are the ones who finally understand that their mother's failure to rise above her own wounds does not mean they must fail too. They can grieve what they didn't receive without letting that absence define their entire existence. Here's what I've learned after many years of watching people struggle with this. Your mother was probably doing the best she could with what she had, and her best wasn't good enough. Both of these things can be true simultaneously. She tried and she failed. She loved you and she hurt you. She wanted better for you and she couldn't provide it. She carried wounds and she passed them on. This is the paradox you must hold. Not one or the other, but both. Not she was terrible or she was wonderful, but she was human, terribly beautifully, painfully human, limited in the way all humans are limited, wounded in the way all humans are wounded, trying in the way all humans try, and failing in the way all humans fail. And you know what happens when you can finally hold this paradox? You become free to be human too. You can fail and still be worthy. You can be limited and still be enough. You can be wounded and still be whole. Because if she, with all her flaws, was doing her best, then perhaps you, with all your flaws, are doing your best too. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's enough. The seventh danger is the most insidious. It's the danger of waiting. Waiting for her to finally see you. Waiting for her to acknowledge the pain she caused. Waiting for her to become who you needed her to be. Some of you have been waiting your entire lives, and some of you will wait until she dies, and then you'll wait for something that can never come. But here's the terrible truth. She may never see you the way you need to be seen. She may never understand what she did. She may never become the mother you deserved. Not because she doesn't love you, but because she's trapped in her own story, her own wounds, her own limitations. And you cannot wait for her to free herself before you free yourself. Your healing cannot be dependent on her awakening. Your peace cannot require her understanding. Your wholeness cannot need her approval. Because if it does, you're handing her your life on a platter and saying, I can only be whole if you allow it. And that's giving her power she never should have had, and probably doesn't even know she has. So, what's the alternative? The alternative is to finally, truly, deeply understand that she gave you what she could, which wasn't enough, and now it's your responsibility to give yourself the rest. Not her responsibility, not anyone else's responsibility, yours. This is not a burden, this is liberation, because it means you're no longer waiting. You're no longer dependent on someone who cannot give you what you need. You're finally taking your life into your own hands and saying, I will become the source of what I needed from her. I will learn to give myself the unconditional acceptance, the gentle guidance, the fierce protection that I needed from her and didn't receive. This is reparenting yourself, not in some new age superficial way, but in the deepest sense, learning to speak to yourself the way you needed to be spoken to, learning to comfort yourself the way you needed to be comforted, learning to believe in yourself the way you needed her to believe in you. You become the mother to yourself that you never had. And here's the beautiful thing. When you do this, when you finally take responsibility for your own healing rather than waiting for her to heal you, something shifts in how you see her. The anger softens, not because she's changed, but because you're no longer needing her to be different. The resentment fades, not because what she did was okay, but because you're no longer trapped by it. You can look at her and see a woman who struggled, a woman who carried pain she never processed, a woman who loved as best she could with a heart that was partially closed by her own wounds. And you can feel compassion, not because you're trying to be spiritual or good, but because you finally understand what it's like to be human, to be limited, to do your best and have it not be enough. This compassion is not weakness, it's strength, because it comes from a place of wholeness, not wounding. It comes from finally being able to see clearly, without the distortion of unmet needs. It comes from understanding that hurt people, and healed people heal people, and you've chosen to be in the second category. Now, I want to be clear about something. This understanding doesn't make the pain disappear. It doesn't erase what happened. You don't suddenly have a perfect relationship with your mother, and you don't forget the wounds. What happens is that the wounds stop defining you. They become part of your story, but not the whole story. They shape you, but they don't control you. You can remember the times she failed you without being destroyed by them. You can acknowledge the damage without letting it be your excuse. You can honor the pain without letting it be your identity, because you finally understand that she was a chapter in your life, not the whole book. She was the beginning, but you're writing the middle and the end. And here's the final understanding, the one that truly sets you free. Your mother's inability to fully love you, to fully see you, to fully meet your needs, this was never a reflection of your worthiness. It was a reflection of her capacity. Just as a cup can only pour out what it contains, she could only give what she had. And what she had was limited, not because you were unworthy of more, but because she herself never received more. This means that your worthiness was never in question. It was never up for debate. It was never dependent on her ability to recognize it. You were worthy the day you were born, and you're worthy now, regardless of whether she saw it or not. Her blindness was her tragedy, not yours, unless you make it yours by believing that her failure to see meant there was nothing to see. So, what does healing actually look like? It looks like waking up one day and realizing you haven't thought about what she did to you in weeks. It looks like being able to hear criticism without immediately crumbling, because you finally internalized that your worth isn't determined by others' opinions. It looks like catching yourself repeating one of her patterns and being able to laugh gently and choose differently. It looks like being in a relationship where you can receive love without constantly testing it, because you finally internalized that you're lovable. It looks like being able to mother others, your children, your friends, yourself, with the wisdom that comes from knowing both what you needed and what she couldn't give. It looks like finally being at peace with the reality of who she was and who you're choosing to become. The path to this healing is not through her, it's through you. It's through the daily practice of seeing yourself clearly, speaking to yourself kindly, allowing yourself to be human. It's through the gradual work of replacing her harsh voice with your own gentle one, her limitations with your expanding capacity, her wounds with your slowly healing ones. And one day, if you do this work, you'll look at your mother and feel peace. Not because she's changed, not because she's given you what you needed, but because you've finally given it to yourself. You've become the parent to yourself that you always needed. And from that place of wholeness, you can finally see her, not as the monster or the saint, but as the frightened woman she always was, doing her best in a world that never taught her how to truly love. This is the understanding that heals. Not understanding her to excuse her, not understanding her to minimize your pain, but understanding her to finally free yourself from the prison of needing her to be different. Understanding her so you can stop being the wounded child waiting for rescue and become the whole adult who rescues herself. Your mother gave you life, but she couldn't give you everything you needed to live that life fully. Now it's your turn. Now you get to give yourself everything else, not in some metaphorical way, in the realest, most practical way possible. Every day, in every choice, you get to decide, will I perpetuate what she gave me, or will I transform it? And when you finally understand that this choice is yours, that it's always been yours, that she doesn't have to change for you to heal, that's when the healing truly begins, not before. Because you cannot heal what you're still blaming on someone else. You can only heal what you finally take responsibility for transforming. So, look at your mother. Really look. See the wounded child inside the woman. See the frightened girl inside the role of mother. See the human being who struggled and failed and tried and hurt you and loved you all at the same time. And then gently, with all the compassion you can muster, turn that same gaze on yourself. See the wounded child in you that's still waiting for her to be different. See the frightened part that's still hoping for rescue. See the human being you are, who inherited her wounds but doesn't have to keep them, who learned her patterns but can unlearn them, who carries her pain but can finally put it down. This is how you heal. Not by changing her, not by getting her to see, but by seeing yourself clearly enough to know that you were always worthy of more than she could give, and you're capable of giving it to yourself now. This is the understanding that sets you free. This is what you need to know about your mother. She was human, and so are you, and that, my friend, is enough.